Imagine enjoying a sunny afternoon with your child when suddenly you're accused of kidnapping, not because of your behavior, not because of anything suspicious, but because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what happened to Naomi, a mother who found herself surrounded by police in an upscale cafe, all because someone didn't believe she could be the mother of her own daughter. But what happened next shocked everyone. Stay until the end, because this story reveals a powerful truth about bias, justice, and a mother's unbreakable bond. It was one of those perfect sun-drenched afternoons in Beverly Hills where the air felt like silk and the streets buzzed with soft conversations, luxury cars, and the clink of cafe glasses. Naomi, a confident black woman in her mid-30s, wore a casual yet elegant white blouse and jeans, her natural curls tucked back with a gold clip. She held the small hand of her 6-year-old daughter, Leia, as they stepped into Sweet Cream and Cone d'Amandcuy, a popular upscale ice cream cafe known for its handcrafted cones and artisan toppings. Leia bounced with excitement, her blonde ponytail swinging behind her as she pulled Naomi toward the counter, blue eyes wide with indecision. "Can I try the honey lavender first, Mummy?" she asked. Naomi laughed, soft and warm, the kind of laugh that made people turn and smile without knowing why. They ordered a double scoop vanilla bean with caramel drizzle, and Naomi guided Leia to a window seat where sunlight spilled across their table. For a few quiet minutes, it was just mother and daughter, sharing sticky napkins, melted ice cream drips, and weekend plans. But that peace shattered with 5 words spoken sharply and too loudly from across the room. "Mom, please, step away from the child." Naomi's head whipped around to see 2 uniformed officers standing just inside the cafe, the taller one already unsapping the strap on his notepad holster. The entire cafe hushed. Conversations died mid-sentence, spoons paused mid-air, and phones began to rise like a tide. Naomi blinked, slowly, confused. "I'm sorry, what she asked, standing now, shielding Leia behind her instinctively. The officer's face was unreadable. "We received a report of a possible child abduction. We need to verify your relationship to the girl." It was one of those perfect sun-drenched afternoons in Beverly Hills where the air felt like silk and the streets buzzed with soft conversations, luxury cars, and the clink of cafe glasses. Naomi, a confident black woman in her mid-30s, wore a casual yet elegant white blouse and jeans, her natural curls tucked back with a gold clip. She held the small hand of her 6-year-old daughter, Leia, as they stepped into Sweet Cream and Cone d'Amandcuy, a popular upscale ice cream cafe known for its handcrafted cones and artisan toppings. Leia bounced with excitement, her blonde ponytail swinging behind her as she pulled Naomi toward the counter, blue eyes wide with indecision. "Can I try the honey lavender first, Mummy?" she asked. Naomi laughed, soft and warm, the kind of laugh that made people turn and smile without knowing why. They ordered a double scoop vanilla bean with caramel drizzle, and Naomi guided Leia to a window seat where sunlight spilled across their table. For a few quiet minutes, it was just mother and daughter, sharing sticky napkins, melted ice cream drips, and weekend plans. But that peace shattered with 5 words spoken sharply and too loudly from across the room. "Mom, please, step away from the child." Naomi's head whipped around to see 2 uniformed officers standing just inside the cafe, the taller one already unsapping the strap on his notepad holster. The entire cafe hushed. Conversations died mid-sentence, spoons paused mid-air, and phones began to rise like a tide. Naomi blinked, slowly, confused. "I'm sorry, what she asked, standing now, shielding Leia behind her instinctively. The officer's face was unreadable. "We received a report of a possible child abduction. We need to verify your relationship to the girl." The younger officer gestured towards the front of the store. "Mom, if you could just step over here so we can speak privately." "No," Naomi interrupted, her voice still composed but unwavering. "We will stay right here, in public, where people can see." She reached into her purse slowly, deliberately. "I'll show you whatever you need, but I won't pretend like this isn't what it is." She handed over her driver's license, then Leia's school ID, which clearly listed Naomi's name as the guardian. The officers glanced between the IDs and the girl beside her, who now stood quiet but visibly scared, holding Naomi's hand like it was the only safe thing left in the world. "That woman," Naomi said, pointing at the caller, "decided that because my daughter and I don't share skin tone, something criminal must be happening. You're welcome to check my documents, call my husband, or do whatever else your protocol requires. But understand this. I will not let my daughter be traumatized so some woman can feel like a hero in her own imagination." The first officer hesitated. "You have a husband we can call?" "Yes," Naomi said. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Blake, I need you to come to Sweet Cream on Fairfax. Now! Police were called. Someone thinks I abducted our daughter." There was silence for a beat. Then Blake's voice clipped and focused. "I'm on my way. Don't say another word until I get there." As Naomi hung up, she noticed that more people were now filming. Some looked uncomfortable, a few looked sympathetic, and others, like the woman who made the call, watched with the self-satisfaction of someone who thought she had done her civic duty. "I've seen this kind of thing on the news," the woman was now saying to someone else, just loud enough. "Trafficking is everywhere these days. That girl didn't look like she belonged." Naomi took a deep breath and knelt beside Leia, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. "Remember what I told you, baby," she whispered. "Sometimes people don't understand our family, but we do, and that's what matters." Leia nodded silently, her lips pressed into a confused frown, and Naomi kissed her forehead before rising again. The officers had stepped back slightly, clearly no longer fully believing the situation was what it seemed. Still they waited. "You've got ID. You've called someone," the older officer said, more gently now. "We'll wait here until we confirm." Naomi crossed her arms, silent. She had nothing more to prove. She wasn't going to make it easy for them. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the mothers like her who lived under the burden of suspicion simply for existing with their children. The café remained thick with silence, tension pressing against the windows like steam. Finally, Blake arrived, tall, white, wearing an expensive but rumpled sport coat and dress shirt, his face flushed with worry and anger. The moment he walked in, recognition flashed across the officers' faces. Blake Henderson, founder of a billion-dollar tech company, a known philanthropist in LA circles, one of those names. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, stepping forward and sliding his arm around Naomi's waist. "She's my wife. That's our daughter." The officers relaxed immediately. The taller one even nodded with a faint apology in his eyes. "Thank you for confirming, sir. We had to follow up on a report." "Did you?" Blake asked, eyes sharp. "Or did someone just decide my wife didn't look like a mother?" He turned toward the woman in the sunglasses. She had turned away now, staring out the window. "This is why I don't come to this neighborhood," she muttered again under her breath. Naomi looked at her, no longer angry, just tired. "You called the police on a mother and daughter having ice cream," she said, "and you think you're the one who doesn't belong?" The woman stood abruptly, gathered her things, and left without another word. As the cafe slowly returned to normal, Naomi sat back down beside Leia and gently handed her the cone, now melting into a sticky mess. "It's okay, baby. You can eat now." But neither of them had much appetite left. No sooner had Naomi handed over her license and Leia's school ID than she sensed the shift. Something had changed in the officer's expression. Their posture relaxed, though only slightly, as they reviewed documents proving what Naomi already knew. This child was hers. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" she asked with quiet authority, meeting their eyes head-on. The taller officer cleared his throat, voice tightened by hesitation. "We received a report of a suspicious interaction involving a child and her guardian." Naomi punctuated each word slowly, like a calm wave rolling in against a wall. "So, someone saw a black mother with her blonde daughter and assumed it had to be criminal. Is that it?" She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she turned toward the woman with sunglasses, who was now surrounded by onlookers and self-satisfied gossiping. Naomi took a deep breath and knelt before Leia. Brushing aside loose strands of blonde hair, she whispered, "Every time someone tries to tell us we don't fit, we remember who we are." The moment was intimate, fierce, even defiant. The officers watched as Leia nodded, found her napkin, wiped her cone. Naomi stood and faced the officers again. "You said you had to follow protocol," she reminded them gently. "But protocols shouldn't be abused to feed prejudice. Call my husband." Pulling her phone from her purse, Naomi tapped Blake's contact and spoke confidently. "Blake, it's your wife. Someone thought I was kidnapping our daughter." Her voice remained calm, but her eyes glimmered with defiance and strength. 10 seconds later, Blake's voice softened the room. "I'm on my way." The recognition in the officer's eyes told Naomi everything she needed to know. Mentioning Blake's name, the wealthy white husband, shifted their perspective. But that didn't surprise her. She had seen this countless times, white face cards validating her reality. One officer swallowed, stepping back like he'd taken a punch. Naomi folded her arms across her chest and faced them squarely. "You have 2 forms of ID. You have my phone call to him, and if that's not enough, I will remain here until you're done." Phones didn't drop. The cafe's buzz resumed. A few customers approached to offer murmured apologies. The woman who'd called the police retreated, leaving behind a heavy silence and a few uncomfortable glances. Naomi brushed a hand along Leia's shoulder and knelt once more. "Are you okay?" Leia sniffled and nodded. Naomi stroked her hair and whispered, "We'll be okay, because we know who we are." As the cafe's door opened once more, and Blake stepped in like a ray of sunshine, Naomi held Leia close, ready for whatever came next. The cafe had settled into an uneasy rhythm as Naomi and Leia waited, side by side. Naomi stood tall, her back straight, arms folded protectively, while Leia sat quietly clutching her napkin. Chandeliers above cast warm light on hushed faces, and the low hum of whispered conversations underscored the tension. The woman who had called the police, sitting near the back by a window, had begun to justify her actions to anyone who would listen. "I was being a good citizen, that's all," she repeated to a curious stranger. "You hear about trafficking on the news all the time. You just can't be too careful." Naomi watched her, with measured composure. When the woman finished speaking, Naomi stepped forward, voice steady and strong. "Ma'am, what exactly made you think I wasn't this child's mother?" The woman blinked, startled by Naomi's calm directness. "Well," she stammered, "you just don't look like her." Every eye in the cafe turned toward them. Naomi tilted her head slowly, turning the words over like a stone in her hand. She let the silence stretch. Then, precisely and without anger, she said, "Like her mother, you mean?" The pause shattered the illusion of certainty. Some phones dropped, faces shifted. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment and took in the room, the mothers sipping lattes, the kids colouring in corners, the barista wiping counters. In that silence she remembered. The PTA president who assumed she was hired help at school events, the paediatric receptionist who insisted on calling Blake to confirm her authority over her daughter's records, the grocery store guard who followed her, and a crying toddler down 3 aisles before offering her a receipt, in case she runs. One incident at a time, a mosaic of doubt and suspicion had been built around her identity. And yet here she stood again, facing people whose assumptions had grown bold enough to involve the police. She reached down and touched Leia's shoulder. "We've lived through all those moments," she said gently. "But no matter how many times they ask us, they can't change who we are." Leia looked up, squeezing her mother's fingers. Naomi pressed forward, addressing the cafe. "If we're asking questions, let's make it better questions. Not whether a black mother belongs with her blonde daughter, but what drove us to question it in the first place." A hush followed. Pour. The woman who'd called the police looked away, embarrassment creeping into her posture. Phones kept recording, but the tenor had shifted. Some people quietly spoke apologies. A few nodded their heads at Naomi, acknowledging they'd seen the bias unfold in their own minds. Naomi met their eyes, an open challenge not to look away. She knew the power of visibility, of being seen not as an object of suspicion, but as a person with a story. She held Leia close now as officers promised to remain until they confirmed her identity via Blake. Naomi stayed calm. Everything had come down to this moment. The woman in sunglasses gathered her purse, cashing in on the next streaming moment, but paused near the door, then left in stark silence. Naomi swallowed hard, awareness settling in that they'd watched her. But what would they think now? Together, mother and daughter waited. Naomi lifted Leia's hand and whispered, "Every time someone questions us, they're revealing their own fear, not ours." Leia looked at her, eyes wide with pride and confusion all at once. The crowd watched, changed in small ways. In that moment, the mic'd complaint of one assumption had echoed something larger, the slow transformation of conscience in others, just by standing firm and speaking truth. And though Naomi carried scars from every previous incident, she carried them now as marks of resilience. A reminder that no matter how many times love is questioned, love remains unshaken. Blake arrived in less than 10 minutes, the wheels of his black Tesla barely stopping before he was out of the car and through the door. His face was pale with a tight jaw, eyes darting until they found Laya and Naomi. He didn't hesitate. He moved straight to their table, knelt in front of Laya, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her forehead with trembling lips. Then he stood, turned to Naomi, touched her shoulder, and finally faced the officers. "This is my wife. That is our daughter. What is going on here?" His voice was sharp, low, laced with disbelief and barely controlled fury. The taller officer, clearly unsure how to handle the sudden shift in energy, began explaining the call they received. Blake held up a hand to stop him. "No, I want to know what made you stop her in the first place. Do you see what this has done to her?" He pointed at Naomi, who stood tall but whose eyes were shining with withheld tears. "She doesn't need to prove anything to you." Around them, the cafe had grown thick with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. The woman in sunglasses, Karen as the internet would soon dub her, was suddenly shrinking into the background, sensing the tides turning. Someone whispered, "Isn't that Blake Henderson?" Another murmured, "Is this being filmed?" Phone stayed aloft. The younger officer offered a quiet apology, his voice drowned by the noise of gathering shame, but apologies couldn't unring the bell. Naomi didn't need an apology. She needed acknowledgement, justice, and above all, systemic change. Blake didn't shout. His rage was cold and clear. "You humiliated her in front of our daughter because you couldn't imagine that a black woman could be this child's mother?" The moment, captured on 4 different phones from 4 different angles, spread across the internet like wildfire. Influencers reposted the videos. News stations debated it. Think pieces and morning talk shows tackled the story of Naomi and Laya. The hashtags #MotherNotNanny and #BelieveBlackMothers trended on multiple platforms. Celebrities chimed in. Advocacy groups held panels. Naomi was invited to speak at a community forum the following week. And there, standing at the microphone in front of dozens of families and local leaders, she spoke not just about the ice cream parlor incident, but about all the small, daily indignities that came before it. The times she had to laugh off ignorance to protect her daughter, the way she was constantly asked to explain herself and how she had become used to strangers questioning her very identity. Her voice was steady, her presence commanding, and when she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. And yet she didn't stop there. She organised a support group for multiracial families and black mothers raising children who didn't look like them. She partnered with educators to create inclusive curriculum around what families look like. She turned the incident into an inflection point, and Laya, too young to understand the full weight of it all, simply knew that her mummy had stood up for them, and more than ever before she held Naomi's hand a little tighter, her trust unshaken. The wound would leave a scar, yes, but Naomi was no stranger to healing. Her love, her truth, her dignity, they had all been questioned, and yet here she was, holding her daughter's hand, the world watching, and this time listening. What would you have done in that cafe? Would you have spoken up? Would you have challenged what your eyes told you and your biases whispered? Naomi's story isn't just hers, it's a mirror held up to all of us. And the truth it reflects may be uncomfortable, but it's one we must face if we want real change. Naomi's story is not just a headline, it's not just one woman's experience. It's a reflection of a deeper, quieter injustice, one that happens in parking lots, schools, waiting rooms, and yes, even ice cream cafes. If this story made you pause, feel uncomfortable, or even angry, good. That means your heart is working, but awareness is only the first step. Start the conversation with your children, your friend, your co-workers. Challenge the stereotypes you've absorbed. Speak up when silence feels safer. Question the stories your eyes tell you at first glance. And most importantly, believe people when they say, "This is my family." Share Naomi's story. Let it ripple. Let it change something, because change doesn't start with policies, it starts with people. It starts with you.